Kraft Mac and Cheese is better than 90s hip-hop. We'll remind you of your childhood without making you feel incredibly old. Kraft Mac and Cheese. Best thing ever.
Welcome back to Fine Tuning with Drew Taylor, your one-stop shop when it comes to animation news and commentary. I'm entertainment writer Jim Hill, and Mr. Taylor, whose writings in the industry you can regularly read over on The Wrap, and his musings on the Mission Impossible movies you can still listen to over on Light the Fuse, the official Mission Impossible podcast. Drew and I are recording this week's show on Sunday, January 25th, which is when there is this massive snowstorm that's stretched across the United States right now. 900,000 people across the country currently without power, which is why more than 400 movie theaters weren't up and running in the country this past weekend, which, as we'll discuss in a moment, had an impact on the North American box office. And we'll get to that, what that would have done to domestic ticket sales in a moment. Not to mention the news from this past Friday when we found out which full-length animated films and which animated shorts wound up with Oscar nominations. But before we get to that, Drew, you're actually headed out the door later, as soon as we finish up here, to do yet another one of your panel presentation things, right?
Yeah, I'm doing Q&As after two different screenings of Arco at the Century City Mall. So maybe some of the listeners of the show will be there, Jim, and they'll say hello. But yeah,
that would be cool. Do we have anything else in the works in the coming week to 10 days?
I don't think so, although we'll be able to talk about some cool stuff later this week in regards to an upcoming animated feature that we'll be able to talk about on the next week's show. So,
there we go.
It might have something to do with people's consciousness getting placed in the body of animated beavers. But, who's to say?
All right. Well, again, next week's show. But on this week's show, before we get to this week's show, we have to acknowledge our sponsor, which is, of course, unlockmagic.com, where you can get real discounts on Walt Disney World and Universal Orlando tickets, sometimes upwards of 12% off. And just so you know, Unlock Magic is run by the exact same team behind the DVC rental store and the DVC resale market. So if you're planning a trip to Central Florida in 2026, just pick your dates, grab your tickets, and go. Unlock Magic makes it that easy to get some pretty significant savings. Oh, and when you get your tickets, tell the nice folks at unlockmagic.com. And it was Drew and it was Jim who sent you. Okay, so back to the North American box office. And Drew, we knew it would eventually happen. I mean, after 5 weeks at the top of the box office, James Cameron's Fire and Ash, the third film in the Avatar series, finally got knocked out of the number one spot in North American ticket sales. I guess what's interesting about that is how little money it actually took to do that this weekend. What was it? Well, for starters, there's an Amazon MGM film in theaters right now, starring Chris Pratt, called Mercy, which was originally projected to do $12.6 million worth of ticket sales domestically. Again, that was before this giant storm and those 400 plus theaters shutting down. So what is it? As of right now, they're estimating, 11.2, or basically $1.5 million off of original projections. But that was still more than enough to defeat Fire and Ash at the box office, right? Which took in 7, I want to say. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, this shows you the differences between Fire and Ash and Way of Water, which I believe Way of Water was number one for 7 weeks. So this is already kind of powering down.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, it's going to be a big shortfall from Way of Water, but it'll be interesting to see how short a fall that will be ultimately. But 7 million. So it's at 1.37 worldwide right now.
Yeah. Now, that's number 2 at the box office. Number 3 was Zootopia 2 with 5.7 million worth of ticket sales in this territory. And and it's worth noting that between the snowstorm and people having trouble getting out to theaters and those 400 theaters closing because of no power, this is the lowest total box office weekend of the year. Now, mind you, again, I know it's only the fourth week of January, but it's just $58 million, which we've had films just in the past 3 weeks do that business over their opening weekend. But since we're talking about that Byron Howard, Jared Bush film, which, by the way, just this past week blew by the $400 million barrier in North America, Drew pointed out that actually on the day this show goes live online, Tuesday, January 27th, that's when Zootopia 2 debuts, for both buying and renting digitally. That's what's going on, right?
Correct. Yes. And then it'll be on physical media, which is, I know what everyone wants to know about as the, true champions of physical media that our listeners are, Jim. That will be on March 3rd.
Yep.
So you will be able to buy it in a 4K Steelbook on Blu-ray and DVD on March 3rd. So,
okay.
Yeah.
And since we're talking about animated features that are still in theatrical release, we mentioned on last week's Fine Tuning House, the SpongeBob movie Search for SquarePants was just hanging in there. It was the 10th film in the top 10. This weekend, it's number 13 with just $965,000 worth of tickets sold in North America. But to be honest, that drop off in ticket sales is likely because, it was this past Tuesday, January 20th, that SpongeBob movie, the Search for SquarePants, then became available to buy and rent on digital. And by the way, that film contains over 20 minutes of bonus material. Before we close up this week's weekend box office report, I wanted to circle back on Mercy, which was directed by Timur Bekmambetov. Now, was it Abraham Lincoln Zombie Hunters? Was that his, or
Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunters?
Vampire Hunters.
Yeah.
Okay. And which, by the way, I enjoyed. I bring up Timur because he's the guy back in 2011 who bought the house that Walt Disney built back in 1932 up on Walking Way in Los Feliz. Walt actually used his Mickey Mouse money. And you got to remember that character was first introduced to the world back in October of 1928 with Steamboat Willie. But he used that money to build the 6,400 square foot storybook mansion. And this is where Walt and Lillian raised their two daughters, Diane and Sharon, well into their teen years. Anyway, Bekmambetov bought the place for $3.7 million, and then spent the next 2 years and many millions of dollars restoring Walt's Walking Way home to the way it was when the Disney family lived there. And Timur was nice enough to give me a tour of the place a year or so into this renovation. Drew, they've held a bunch of press events there. Have you ever been to the house, or?
No, I never have. I didn't know that he restored it to its former glory.
Yeah.
Or that he was showing you around.
Well,
I'm shocked you got past security.
Well,
but, yeah.
Again, they had far lower standards back then. But I remember him, for example, showing off the screening room that Walt had built at the house so he could then watch dailies that had been sent over from Disney Studios. And Tara shared this great story about Lillian was so insistent that there be an actual separation between Walt's home life and Walt's work life, that she wouldn't allow the projectionist, who'd actually drive over from the studio with cans of film to show Walt, to use either the front door or the back door. So they had to build this separate door leading into the projection booth at the Walking Way home. And then to sort of, put the cherry on the sundae, because again, these are wet celluloid prints, highly, highly flammable stuff. So what they used to do during the day with production booths, I guess it was lined with, asbestos, and it had a lead door so that, were the stuff to ever catch fire, Sharon and Diane would be fine, but, the poor guy would be trapped in there and die. Anyway, Timmer also shared the specific reason why Walt decided to sell The Walking Way Home in 1950 and then move the Disney family out to Holmby Hills. And it turns out that Walt's daughter, Diane, who had been born back in December 33, so if you do the math, by the time 1950 rolls around, Diane is now old enough to apply for her learner's permit. And the house at Walking Way has this ridiculously steep driveway that you have to make this crazy sharp turn to get into, the sort of the parking spot at the top of the hill. And Walt is just terrified that his daughter, as a beginning driver, getting behind the wheel, and figured that at some point, given the physical setup of the house, she's going to either, back up over the edge of the driveway and either wreck the car or hurt herself. So this is one of the reasons why Walt ultimately buys the house in Holmby Hills, which has a much easier driveway for a teenage driver to negotiate. And also, let's not forget, by 1950, Walt is now flush with all that Cinderella money, which came in as of February 1950. So I'm not sure if Timur still lives there with his family. I've heard that Walt's Walking Way Home is now available for rent for $40,000 a month. Also, by the way, you can rent it for private events. And in fact, again, what was weird is I want to say a couple of years after Timur was nice enough to take me around the work in progress, I was back in there for Walt Disney Studios Home Entertainment held a media event there for Sleeping Beauty, which was weird because, that wasn't a movie that Walt was working on while he was in that house. But go figure. Anyway, we will be back with even more animation-related news in a moment. But first, this.
It's football season, and you can now get almost anything you need for game day delivered with Uber Eats. What do we mean by almost? Well, you can't get a running back delivered, but you can get baby back ribs delivered. A strong defense? No. A strong deodorant? Yes. A six-pack of abs? Nope. Six-pack of beer? Yes. Get almost anything for game day delivered with Uber Eats, official on-demand food delivery partner of the NFL. Order now. Alcohol 21 plus and in select cities. Product availability varies by region. See app for details.
And we're back. Okay, folks. So, kind of ironic that in this part of today's show, we're going to talk about the Academy Award nominations that were announced just last week. In fact, Drew's headed out the door shortly to go host those two back-to-back screenings of Arco and then, do panels after those. That's over in Century City. And Arco, Drew's been a champion of that film for quite some time now, and it wound up as a nominee for this year's Best Animated Feature, along with Elio from Pixar, K-Pop Demon Hunters from Netflix, more importantly, Sony Pictures Animation. We have Little Amelie, or the character of Rain from Maybe Movies and Puffin Pictures. I love those two studio names. And then finally, Zootopia 2 from Disney. And Drew, it's been a while since a made by a major studio animated feature is taking home an Oscar. I mean, we had Flow in 2025. We had The Boy and the Heron in 2024. Though, you got to argue Hayao Miyazaki Studio Ghibli. That's kind of a major studio. We also had Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio in 2023, and again from Netflix. And finally, we have to go all the way back to 2022 for Encanto, for Disney taking up an Oscar. And what would you say this time around? I mean, I know, you're a fan of Arco, and it would be lovely if we saw another Flow type win, but isn't the smart money this time around really on K-Pop Demon Hunters?
It is, yeah. Yeah, and I think that, it's just the one to beat at this point. And you're missing one film though, Jim, in your little rundown here, which is that Soul won in 2021.
Okay,
for Best Animated Feature, which is
that's true. That's
it's
true.
Still it's a bit Pixar. Pixar's we're the major, but yeah, I mean, I just think that there were so many good animated features this year. There were so many good ones that weren't even nominated. Movies like Chow, which I've talked about on the show before, that I absolutely adored, and All You Need Is Kill. But yeah, it's interesting. I don't know if you saw that THR article, Jim, about how the Academy Awards is going to have to finally start acknowledging anime as a actual kind of like viable thing, because things like Demon Hunter did not get nominated, even though that was a huge hit. It's still being very much gate kept by the Academy. Scarlet did not get nominated, Jim, which is another great Japanese animated movie. Even though Belle did, I believe, get nominated a few years ago. So yeah, it's crazy that this is what it is. But I think that all the nominees are really fantastic. So I'm not annoyed at the nominees, but it would be nice to see them kind of opening it up a little bit. Yeah.
Realistically, do you see, a best anime category and a best animated feature category? I mean,
that's what should happen, is that there should be a foreign animated category, is what I think.
Interesting.
So that you could have domestic productions. Yeah.
Okay.
But, we're just getting casting now for the first time, Jim. And stunts are coming in 27, so... slowly but surely. But that's what I would campaign for if I could.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, hang in there, folks. 2040. That'll be the year. So, but anyway,
That'll be it.
Okay. Back to K-Pop Demon Hunters, which again, by the way, has already taken home the Best Animated Feature trophy from the Golden Globes and the Critics' Choice Awards. Also, want to remind folks, K-Pop Demon Hunters is actually for 2 Oscars, Best Animated Feature and Best Song, Golden. Also up for 13 Annies. And again, reminder that ceremony is being held on Saturday, February 21st on the UCLA campus at Royce Hall. To pivot now to the Best Animated Shorts. This year's nominees are Butterfly, Forever Green, The Girl Who Cried Pearls, Retirement Party, and then finally The Three Sisters. And I'm ashamed to admit this, Drew. I haven't seen one of these. I'm hoping that our one remaining arts theater here in this area, and that's the Red River over in Concord, New Hampshire. Sometimes they will put together a program. It's just sort of like, these are all of the best animated shorts, and I can make a drive over there and catch that. And we've got. We've actually got more time than we've had years previous between now and the Academy Awards, because usually it's the 2nd or the 5th, and this time around it's March 15th, right? Almost
March 15th. Yeah. Yep. And I think you're gonna love some. I've only seen a few of them. I really loved Forever Green, which is done by 2 Disney animation animators, kind of off hours. They've been working on this thing for years. And it's done in the style of this Disney animator Jeremy Spears, who does whose handle on Instagram is Whittle Workshop, and he does these kind of animals that he's whittled out of wood and then casts in resin and sells, and they're beautiful. So it's in that style, and it's a really lovely little story. So Disney fans should definitely check that out. I know you and I were kind of hoping that Aaron's Snow Bear would get in.
Same, likewise. And Versa.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed Lockstone's animation cardboard, but at the same time, when you look at the fact that 113 animated shorts were eligible for this year's award, and to winnow that giant pile down to 5 nominees, there's going to be tough cuts. On the other hand, in looking at that list, I didn't see Andreas Deja Mushka in the pile there.
Yeah, there was also a great Cartoon Saloon short that did not get in. But I want to say that one of my favorite shorts that did not get nominated, which is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Chrome Alone 2 Lost in New Jersey, is actually available right now to stream on Paramount Plus, and it's very tricky to find. So I just want to tell everyone, Jim, how to see it on Paramount Plus.
Okay.
So go to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem, and then scroll down to the extras, and it will be as one of the extras on the movie. It's not a standalone thing. If you type in Chrome Alone 2, Lost in New Jersey, you won't find it. So it's on Mutant Mayhem in the special features. Watch it. It's 7 minutes. I watched it again this weekend because I am obsessed with it. So, yes, please do that because it is great.
And speaking of things we should make our listeners aware of, again, Andreas Mushka actually was released worldwide on December 15th last month. And, as soon as we get done here today, I'm going to go check that out. Andreas, by the way, is supposedly back at Disney, mind you, as a consultant on that Villains Land, which is going to be built at the Magic Kingdom in Florida sometime between now and 2031. I've heard that's based.
So about the same time that my foreign animated feature category gets introduced.
There you go.
Villains Land will open.
But again, supposedly this is the thing they really want to have online to drive attendance for Disney World's 60th anniversary. And I get it. Andreas is the guy behind Gaston, Jafar, Scar, also early Yzma. So I get why they would want Mr. Deja in the mix as, Villains Land is getting up out of the ground. But again, if we pivot to something that's not 5 years off, but rather less than 3 months away, we have the Super Mario Brothers Galaxy movie opening at theaters April 1st. And just today we got, all right, this isn't a teaser trailer per se. This is a first look at the character of Yoshi, right?
I guess. I was confused. It was introduced in a Nintendo Direct on YouTube, which is usually where they kind of do a little showcase. So yeah, I think this is the 40th anniversary of Super Mario Brothers, Jim. So the little Direct had a couple of things. It was to introduce Yoshi and to also introduce the new date, Jim, because this is actually, it moved up 2 days from Friday, April 3rd to Wednesday, April 1st, which is only giving my beloved Hoppers a few weeks to make all that cheddar cheese. But, so yeah, there were a couple of things going on with this little clip. Okay. But what did you think?
I really enjoyed it. I think they did a sweet job, and I'm not going to lie, I enjoyed the sort of, this is coming from Universal, home of the Jurassic World, Jurassic Park films, and to get a really for real T-Rex. That was fun. So definitely go check this out, folks.
I hope they remember jokes in this one, Jim. That was my tweet today, is that the first movie is sort of an arid wasteland of nothing going on. So I hope. I mean, it looks beautiful, but I just hope there's a little more meat on the bones this time.
We can only hope. All right, now one place that I can pretty much guarantee that this first look, teaser, trailer, whatever the hell it is, for Super Mario Brothers Galaxy movie is not going to be shown, is at the 65th anniversary screening of 101 Dalmatians at D23, the official Disney fan club, is going to be staging at the AMC Disney Springs theaters on Saturday, February 21st. And look, if you're a Disney animation fan or a Disney history buff, the reason you want to attend this 101 Dalmatians screening isn't the limited edition Cruella pin that they're going to give all event attendees, but rather that genuine Disney legend Floyd Normand is going to be in attendance. And not only that, but for a half hour before the screening gets underway, and just to let you know, screening starts at 3 p.m. on February 21st, so the talk part is 2:30, and make sure you get there for that. Floyd is going to be looking back on his days of working on this animated feature, which again, want to remind you folks, very interesting time at Disney Animation Studios, because on the heels of Sleeping Beauty underperforming at the box office in February of 59, which then led the company management laying off 3/4 of the artists and the animators who were working at Disney at the time, this was a very scary time at Disney Studios. No one knew for sure whether, and feature animation at this point, Drew, it's cut back to 75 people. And they're like, how the hell are we going to make a movie? A new full-length animated feature with so few people. But Floyd, who was there, can tell you how they pulled it off. And I bring that up because this wasn't the only time that things got scary at Disney Studios. Back in late 84, early 85, when, all of the artists and animators who were working at Disney feature animation then, they got thrown off the lot and had to go work in a crappy warehouse over in Glendale. And we will talk about that moment in a sec. But first, this.
This episode is brought to you by FX's The Beauty Official Podcast. Join host Evan Ross Katz on the official podcast for FX's hottest new series, The Beauty, taking you behind the scenes with its amazing stars as they discuss the show's most jaw-dropping moments. Featuring Evan Peters, Anthony Ramos, Jeremy Pope, Ashton Kutcher, Rebecca Hall, Bella Hadid, Meghan Trainor, Isabella Rossellini, Jessica Alexander, and Ari Grainer. Search FX's The Beauty wherever you listen to podcasts.
I had that dream again. My small business needs to hire, but I don't use LinkedIn, and I hire wrong. So our orders get all backed up. We're drowning in paperwork, then actually drowning, careless fighting off sharks with a stapler, and pirates are pillaging the office copier, and then I wake up.
Don't let hiring nightmares ruin your dreams. LinkedIn Jobs' new AI assistant goes beyond the resume, using unique insights to deliver a smarter shortlist. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/quality. Start hiring today with LinkedIn.
Are you a forward thinker? Then you need an HR and finance platform that thinks like you do. Workday is the AI platform that helps propel your organization, your workforce, and your industry into the future. Workday, moving business forever forward.
And we're back. All right, folks. On last week's show, Drew and I actually started off by talking about the sad passing of Roger Allers. We lost that animation giant back on January 17th at the age of 76. And, and we will be talking about Roger's time at Disney in a moment. But I also wanted to acknowledge that we just learned that we lost another pillar of the animation community, Ron Stark, the guy behind SR Laboratories. Now, members of the general public probably do not know Ron's name, but he was huge in the field of animation restoration. If you had a painted piece of celluloid that then had, that you'd paid top dollar for, that suddenly paint is flaking off of, there was only one place you could take it, and that was SR Labs over in Westlake Village. And Ron was kind enough to host me there a bunch of times. He would always take me around and show me the stuff that they were working on. And Drew, it was everything from, Snow White on forward. And what was interesting, Disney itself sent stuff to Ron to get restored, and that was largely because what the folks working in Burbank had forgotten, Ron and his team remembered, and they did impossible restorations. I mean, people forget now that when Disney first started selling, pieces of its own animation, they'd send it out to galleries around the country. By the way, Drew, I picked up my first pieces of animation in I want to say 78, 79 for $40 or $50 a piece. And these were like the Aristocats and Robin Hood and that sort of thing. But what they would do to preserve it is they take a piece of plastic and put it on top of the painted cell and then laminate it. And that worked fine.
God.
For a couple of years. But then the chemicals in the paint would, start to, degrade and would produce gas, which would then cause the cells to bubble. And what Ron's team had to do at SR Labs was to literally, first they had to peel away the laminated plastic and then get in there and repaint, and using the Disney paints themselves. They got a hold of the color wheels. And the formulas for the Disney paints, and they duplicated the line work, and more to the point, they also for a time with Disney's permission created or recreated some classic pieces with Disney permission. For example, I've got a Sword in the Stone here at the house that I love. Likewise, Ron was kind enough to gift me a Bacchus from Fantasia a few years back. And by the way, there was a lot of stuff that Ron had that he wasn't supposed to have. I mean, I still remember going into the conference room there at SR Labs, and there on the wall was this lovely pencil drawing of Snow White lying down in the tall grass with her dress up over her bare bottom. And Drew, I have to tell you, she was indeed the fairest in the land. Anyway, here's the thing. There's a lot of people who, took pieces of art to SR Labs because they knew Ron and his team could fix these things. And right now with Ron gone, there's a lot of people concerned about this. And Stacey Nichols from the lab put out a message just the past weekend to the effect, if you currently have artwork, materials, or projects with SR Laboratories, please contact me directly, and we can account for all items and discuss the next steps. And artwork may be picked up in person by appointment only. So
that's not incredibly heartening there, but yeah.
But on the other hand, the fact that, in this sad time, they're stepping up, and it's like, look, we understand we've had a loss here, but, I know people are concerned about their artwork, and just get a hold of us. We'll get it straightened out. Anyway, back now to Roger Allers. And Drew, I have to say this past week, I was amused to see a lot of people, when they were looking to pay tribute to Roger, did you see the video that kept bubbling up where it's Roger pitching the boards for Be Our Guest from Beauty and the Beast, and it's like Jeffrey Katzenberg, standing in front of the boards, and they've got a boombox down at the bottom of the room where it's Jerry Orbach singing the test track for Be Our Guest, but Roger's got the pointer and moving you from drawing to drawing to drawing. Did you get to see that at all, or?
No, but I know exactly the footage you're talking about because it is such a, it was so widely used in the marketing for the movie, and it was such a obvious kind of like phony. I'm just saying that I don't think that was from a real pitch session. Let's just say that. Is that fair to say?
Well, the one thing, if you're actually paying attention, for a tenth of a second, you get a drawing of, you see who they're singing and dancing to, and you realize that's not Belle. That's Maurice. I mean, this was at least done early enough in the phony publicity, thing, but it's Maurice, just it's back when this number was at the front of the movie. And it was only, I want to say they're halfway through production where Katzenberg's like, we're singing to the wrong person. They should be singing to Belle. And you got to interview Roger a couple of times over the years, right?
Yeah, a lovely guy, and I shared with you the piece that I did with Tom Schumacher, and I did not realize what a huge and important figure he was in the theatrical version of. The Lion King. I mean, he was saying that, he was there supervising every, different language version and making tweaks to dialogue and to song lyrics. And it was just very impressive to me to know that he stuck around for so long and kind of shepherded the stage musical when he didn't have to, we can talk about what happened on Kingdom of the Sun, but it was not a pleasant experience for him.
No, it wasn't. And in fact, I was especially lucky after Roger had left Disney and gone over to Sony. People forget that he co-directed with Jill Colton their first full-length animated film, Open Season. But Roger talked over and over again how, you're right in the middle of making, an animated film, but only then when you're in the middle, it's like, oh, this is what this movie is about. And in fact, again, the project that basically put Roger on the map was the hand-drawn animated version of The Lion King, which again is how he wound up being involved in the stage version that Disney sent out started in Minneapolis, came to Broadway in 97, I want to say. When that project starts in the early 90s, it's seen in-house at Disney as an opportunity to do another Bambi-like film. And George Scribner, who directed Oliver and Company, is assigned as a solo director. But Katzenberg is seeing the boards that are initially coming in for what at that time is called King of the Jungle. And it's like, he's like, these are too serious. George is making a National Geographic special. So Jeffrey tells Roger, who is just now rolling off of Beauty and the Beast, to go help George. And Katzenberg particularly tells Allers, Scribner is making this movie way too serious. Go fund this thing up. And so Roger starts working on King of the Jungle, but then gets pulled off of that.
King of the Beast was the first
there we go.
title.
There you're right. There we go.
Yes.
Okay. Again, it was only, wasn't it midway through production that somebody kind of raised their hands and lions don't live in the jungle? That's why it became The Lion King. But he gets pulled off of that project, go work on Aladdin, which is in the middle of we need to get rid of Aladdin's mom, and Aladdin's too much of a wimp, make him more like Tom Cruise, the redo. So he's 8 months on that before he then comes back over to King of the Beast, King of the Jungle, whatever the hell they're calling it, which is now, it's actually had its release date pushed back from December of 93 to June of 94 because the film is in that rough a shape. And at this point, Scribner's taken off the film. Roger is given a field promotion. He's taken from head of story to made director. He's like, I can't do this by myself. And he pleads with Rob Minkoff to come over and help him. Look, there's a lot of stories out there about how they fixed the film. How, Timon and Pumbaa, Nathan Lane and Ernie Sarbella had auditioned to be hyenas and gave this really funny audition, and that's how those characters came about. But, it's Don Hahn to this day who tells the story about they are 10 weeks away from release, and they've just had a test screening in Arizona where everybody agrees the film is 90% there, but there's a lot of stuff they still need to fix the film. And so many of the things we love about Lion King today, whether it's what is it? Timon dressed in drag singing the Hawaiian war chant, or Rafiki suddenly becoming a kung fu master. That's all added to the movie in the last 10 weeks before release. And anyway, in talking with Roger, he talked about, it was one of those things where success was the worst possible thing to happen to feature animation, because when The Lion King made, $500 million, all of the wrong people decided, ooh, I need to move into Disney, feature animation at Disney. And these people weren't there to make good movies, but they were there to make serious money. And those sorts of last-minute fixes that were easy to do under Katzenberg. And say what you will about Jeffrey, but he was a whatever it takes guy, and there was never a fix that was ever too late. But Jeffrey had already left Disney at that point to go set up DreamWorks. And here's Roger working on Kingdom of the Sun, Kingdom in the Sun. And that was the thing. They were working toward a version of the movie that would have come together when, these people who hadn't ever worked in animation before but are now somehow in charge. In fact, honestly, part of the problem is Tom Schumacher at that point had stepped away to go run theatrical, Disney theatrical to Broadway, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think he was, by 1999, he was head of animation. And then I think 2 years later, he was head of, or had left to devote full time to theatrical.
Okay.
Which was called something. What was it called originally, Jim?
Oh, dear.
Disney Theatrical Group? Is that what it was? Or is that what it is now?
I want to say yes. Yeah. But anyway, long story short, the people who had experience in doing this and understood the process. I remember once talking with Roy E. Disney about, how he and Jeffrey would fight over, to the effect of you can make an animated feature in 3 years. And Roy was, no, it's 3.5 years. You need that 6 months because you're going to screw up. Something's going to go wrong. And if you cut that 6 months, you're screwed. You don't have the time to fix the film. But anyway, they take Kingdom of the Sun away from him, and it ends up with Mark Tyndale, and it ends up The Emperor's New Groove, and it's a lovely film. I enjoy it to this day. But as Drew mentioned on last week's show, if you watch The Sweatbox, the film that Trudy Styler put together with the help of her husband Singh, who's writing the score for the movie. There was an interesting movie they were making there. And, it would have been intriguing to see what would have happened if they'd be given the time to fix it. But anyway, Allers for a time kind of, he doesn't have a patron, so to speak, at Disney. And what was interesting is a lot of Roger's friends stepped up. I mean, for example, Chris Sanders, who had wound up as the head of story, on Lion King. He offered Roger, hey, come on over and work with us on Lilo and Stitch. And then Don Hahn, who was the producer of Lion King, as the follow-up project for that, Don was like, hey, we're working on Fantasia 2006, and how would you feel about, going back to directing? And he was the one who directed The Little Match Girl, and they got that completed and then canceled the feature. And Roger wound up, that's ultimately when Roger left Disney, went over to Sony to direct Open Season. And then after that, in addition to traveling the world and working on the various theatrical versions of The Lion King, he enjoyed being a story artist, so, what's interesting is if you look at a lot of the films of the early 2000s, Roger's name is in there. He's on Hop, he's on Ted, Ted 2. Even as recently as Wallace and Gromit, Vengeance Most Foul, he was working on that, but he was always great. And, you could always tell when Roger had touched a scene, there was always a great little gag or a great little character moment, that really made things jump out. And anything that you remember, Drew, from your conversations with Roger? Or?
Well, I mean, yeah, he had a kind of boundless energy, and you're right. He did stick around and contributed to Lilo and Stitch in a big way, and I think that it helped that production was in Florida, where he was not kind of besieged by what happened on Kingdom of the Sun. But what's interesting is that in my conversation with Thomas Schumacher just last weekend, he was saying that, there's this story that basically that George was removed and that he was put onto Lion King, which was not the truth. Actually, he was already on, and I think working as a co-director at the time, because he went on the famous trip to Kenya.
He did.
Yes. And so it's like, oh, well, why was Roger there? And at the time, Tom did not go on the trip because he was courting Elton John for the music. I did not know that. Did you know who the first person they went to for the score for the songs was?
Oh, I think I've heard this, but
Paul McCartney.
Yes.
Who was dealing with a sick wife at the time. Obviously, we know how that story ended up, which is very tragic. But that is why Tom was not on the trip to Africa. But Roger was, because Roger, always was a part of it. And the other story that he dispelled was that George didn't want to make it a musical. But if George knew that Tom was there talking to Elton John at the time of the Kenya trip, then it was pretty clear it was going to be a musical. I don't think that Elton John was going to be asked to, provide his great sense of color or something to the movie. He was going to be writing the music, so that's what he was doing, which I thought was very interesting. So
now, is this the?
I just wanted to share those anecdotes.
That's a great story.
But
this is the same trip where they're out on the savannah and. What is it? The guide offers to show them a honey badger, and they're like, "Oh, let's go see the sweet little honey badger." And the next thing is that they're all in the vehicle, screaming like little girls because the honey badger is literally biting the door and scratching, like, let's get out of here. And there's a reason there's no honey badger in the movie. It's just like those things are scary. Well, anyway, all right. So, see, folks, this is why you do a show with a Drew Taylor. You get stories about who, was originally supposed to write the score for, The Lion King. And again, the man has a great eye when it comes to an entertaining story. And by the way, if you want to hear other great stories, you really need to go check out Light the Fuse, which is the official Mission Impossible podcast. Drew did this podcast with Charles Hood. And there are nearly 300 episodes in that show's archive. So, and every one of them has those kinds of great behind-the-scenes stories. And hopefully we have some fun stories here also at Jim Hill Media. If you listen to the other podcasts we do here, Disney Dish with Len Testa, the Epic Universal podcast I do with Eric Hersey, who produces a lot of podcasts here. Likewise, I Want That Too. That's our Disney merch podcast that I do with Eric's lovely bride, Lauren. We'll have a brand new Disney Unpacked coming out shortly. That's a Patreon project I do with Mr. Testa and veteran Imagineer Jim Schul. In fact, Wednesday of this week, we're going to be using Tokyo Disneyland's Pooh's Honey Hunt as an excuse to pay tribute to the late, great Imagineer Eddie Sato. And speaking of great, I want to thank Eric Hersey and David Gray for the great job they do when it comes to editing and producing this podcast. Also have a quick favor to ask folks as we head for the curtain here. If you could go over to Apple Podcasts and rate and review this show as well as Light the Fuse. And let's see, social media-wise, Drew, where can the nice folks find you?
On Instagram and Twitter at Drew Tailored, like a tailored shirt. And yeah, that's pretty much it. What about you, Jim?
Well, I wanted to ask, are you still on Threads at all? Or
I'm on Threads, but I only responded to somebody's snarky ass comment and they said, "Oh, this is the first time he's used Threads since 2024." And that was sort of annoying.
Okay,
so,
no.
I don't know.
Sorry about that. I was just reading that the Threads evidently is surpassing X with daily traffic. So it was like, oh, maybe I need to.
Oh, well, maybe we should move over there.
Maybe we should.
X is absolutely so toxic and awful. But anyway.
Yeah, there you go. Well, speaking of which, that's where you can find me. On X. Likewise, on Instagram is Jim Hill Media, and then over on Facebook is Jim Hill Media News. And with that, folks, that's going to do it for this week's show. By the way, if you did get to see Drew at either of those two Arco screenings, let us know what that was like. I really hope to get to see him in action at some point. But anyway, at that point, we will say thanks for listening, and Mr. Taylor and I will be back soon.